What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us right here. And thank you, Baze, for having me. Yeah, I like Wes Anderson movies, and I always try to get to them like eventually, you know what I mean? It's never like, ooh, new Wes Anderson. I'm going out and I'm hitting it running. But I saw this thing pop up on my dreaded Hulu subscription, and Spore and I watched it, and then I watched it a couple more times because it was just like, there's so much going on here. And I had seen your Barbenheimer stream, and I thought, oh my God, I got to put this in Bay's pocket. And I did on that last Boiler Room, and you watched it, and here we are.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this. I rewatched it today. And so the title of the stream is the Barbie Oppenheimer Nexus, right? It represents sort of a weird fusion of the two movies. And it's interesting that these two movies, these three movies came out at the same time this past summer. It's also funny that it's been like three months have rolled by since this came out. I can't believe it's it's
Yeah.
it's this old now. But because there's already a new Wes Anderson movie coming out.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, with Benedict Cumberbatch. Um, and I think what he's doing for that one is he's scaling it down with fewer actors. I think so far as I know. And this one, like, so Wes Anderson has the cast has like expanded over the last few films until
Yeah.
now we get this huge cast. And what's interesting about this, you guys, is that it's a it's really a meta film, right? Because there's a film within the play, or what have you in this, but there's different layers of meaning in this. And so also go back and check out, everybody, if you haven't seen our Hesher stream on Hesher, on the movie Hesher from just not that long ago. And I did a stream on Rushmore and Wes Anderson films a few months ago. So we're no stranger to Wes Anderson here. And so, what do you think? I mean, what's your take just right off the bat with this movie?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. Like I was thinking about that last night, and it I gotta take my hat off to you, first of all, for noticing the Oppenheimer and Barbie nexus, and then, to have this come on sort of as the cherry on top. It's like, "Oh, wow, okay." So it's set in what, like, the 1950s, I think?
Yeah, 1955.
Right.
Yeah,
So I honestly don't have a good cogent answer to that. To me, there's definitely the nuclear age factor, the post World War II factor, the idea, there's some interesting play on what family is, like, sort of, a broken family in a sense. Tom Hanks. It's odd seeing Tom Hanks in a Wes Anderson film. I feel like that was his first appearance in one, but I might be wrong. They sneak so many people in.
right. Yeah,
But overall, it seems to be an interesting commentary on the human condition at the time, and a commentary on post World War II evolution of psychological operations, and mind control and entertainment. Because there's a UFO factor, there's a space brother factor, there's sort of the different philosophy of life factors. Like the kids, all of the main character, all have like the different imaginary religions, and he's like an atheist, and his wife was a Christian of some sort, if I recall. I don't know. It's very
yeah.
complicated.
Yes, lots of good points. And yeah, so first of all, Tom Hanks, elder, he should keep his hair like it is in this movie. First of all, he's he's a lot
Yeah.
less he's a lot less creeper to me for some reason
Yeah.
when you watch this. And it's funny how, I mean, he's got like a 38 in his waistband the whole movie.
Yeah. In his golf
And
pants.
yeah, yeah. So Tom Hanks plays, and they make a note of this in the movie, that he's Episcopalian, and his family is, I guess, his daughter, who is deceased, right? Who's the mother of the three kids, I guess would be. And then he and his Jason Schwartzman, who plays the main guy, Jason Schwartzman and his son are atheists. And then he has three children, and they are. This was interesting that they are the weird sisters. They're the three weird sisters out of Macbeth. So they're literally doing
Okay.
Macbeth rituals um over the ashes of the mother in between the bungalows. Okay. So for everybody, what this is about, that Hesher was just explaining there, is that this is 1955, and we are in a place called Asteroids. It actually starts off with Bryan Cranston, and Bryan Cranston is a kind of Twilight Zone presenter, right? Jerry's going to love this. He's a Twilight Zone presenter. He comes on and he says that this is a play, right? And we see it from the booth, right? From the production booth. And then we focus in on him. It's in black and white. We see the stage. And then the first person we meet is Edward Norton. Now, Edward Norton is a playwright named Conrad. What's his name? I'll look at. There's so many characters in this, so it's hard to
Yeah.
keep. his name.
I normally, when I get together with you, I keep a little thing on the side where I can at least, like, have the character's name so I can reference them a little
Right.
bit easier, but I didn't even
Yeah.
bother with this one, dude.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll point out is that you notice when you're watching it, the Jason Schwartzman's character, he's a former war photographer, and at one point, the son, somebody asked the son, "Do you have anything of your mom?" And he says, "Well, here's a picture of her that my dad took," and the picture is Margot Robbie. I kept calling her Sydney Melbourne when I was watching this because, but Barbie is in the movie, which is crazy. The actress who plays Barbie is in the movie, and I really noticed it because it's at the end of the film, and she comes on in kind of Marie Antoinette, Catherine the Great clothing, like on another balcony as part of the play rehearsal. But so as part of this sort of Barbenheimer nexus point, that the Barbie actress would be in the movie, I think, is a linchpin. It's crazy, and I don't think it's too far to go by with saying, oh, well, she's just someone might say, oh, she's just an actress, and it's got a large cast. Yeah, but the movie is about the actors playing in the movie. So then that brings her into this universe. So what's explained to us is that this playwright is he's rehearsing for a Broadway play called Asteroid City. And then we have an introduction of the actors, and then we go into the real life of the movie, which is Technicolor. But this is Barbie world, right? Because it is like Technicolor, Panavision, bright colors, and it's Wes Anderson, like sort of boxed, I call it boxed life, right? Because everything is compartmentalized. That's going to be a part in the film. And also, we start off with a train. What's that train? I like the song that they're singing
Dude,
when
the
they're on the train.
song "Grab Me,"
Yeah.
it didn't like
Yeah.
the first time I saw it, I was just kind of like a fish breathing water, but, like,
Yeah.
by the 3rd time I saw it, I was realizing there's a train theme going on
Hmm.
throughout, and the music that goes with the train theme, they were all songs I was unfamiliar with, and I
Yeah.
was, like, really chuffed on. I was like, "Man, this is, like, perfect."
Yeah.
The
It's
soundtrack's
like,
perfect.
it's like, woohoo, let's stop to Santa Fe. Like, it's like, and you're chugging along in this train. And so the train is taking you through the desert, and we end up in Asteroid City. Asteroid City is a place where there's a crater from the year 3000 BC, and there's a meteorite that's been left in the crater. Okay, so the premise of the movie at this point is that we are going to see like tourists and these stargazers, these stargazer foundations sponsored by the Larkings Foundation is what they call it, mixed in with military industrial complex, and they're all there to witness this like convergence of stars and something on the moon. And so we're in these little bungalows, and this is very 50s because we have, so the train thing is interesting. Forgive me if I'm going too fast, people, but there's a lot in this movie. So one thing is we get the train chugging along in the desert. And then I noticed on the second viewing, especially, that the way that Wes Anderson films our point of view is always in right angles. It's like
Yep.
we're moving on a train. So each of the compartmentalized scenes, we're always moving, we're always panning to the left, panning to the right, back up, go forward, and we're seeing things in sort of 90 degrees. So it's like we're witnessing things from a train. And then we get these bungalows that are like train, almost like train. They came straight off the train compartment. And we're introduced to all these various characters. And the main character that we're going to follow is Jason Schwartzman's character, and he is again a former war photographer there with his family. And we all right away noticed that the mom isn't there. So then, like you said, it becomes a kind of family drama, and all these people are introduced, and we're supposed to determine like who they are, what they're doing there, and what's the point of this. Now, I'm just going to bring it up briefly. Like, what happens? I'm going to try to be concise with this because there's so much that happens.
Yeah.
So much happens, but nothing happens. Um, is that we see they gather for the stars or whatever, and then an alien ship comes down. We see the alien. He takes a photograph of the alien. Then the people are they get into La Quarantinqua
Yeah.
for a few months, right? They can't leave. They go through literal psyops. There's a psyops division there, and they go through. They're being interrogated, and people fall in love. They fall out of love. The actors and actresses discuss their roles. Then we cut back at various times to the the rehearsals of this in New York. So we see the black and white world, and then at the end, there's an epilogue with Jason Schwartzman, Tom Hanks, and the son, and then the movie ends essentially. So a lot happens in this with all these various characters. But one thing I'll point, I think that my my overall take with this, before I let you take it away with some of the first scenes of this movie, is that there's a line that that ScarJo says in the movie. We've done a lot of Scarlett Johansson movies, by the way, on this on this channel. ScarJo plays a sort of Betty Davis-esque actress, and she's talking to Jason Schwartzman, who's lost his wife. He's grieving, but when they're talking, she says maybe something like, "Maybe you and I connect because we are unwilling to share our feelings about the world." And so they're both closed off, and so that's how they connect. Now that is like a microcosm of this post-nuke, postmodern world where consumerism, and it's obviously consumerism and capitalism are sort of ruling the landscape. And that's indicative that's conveyed through the first scene with the train going through the desert. Because remember what we see on the train in the compartments, we see like beets, pistachios or something, and then there's a nuke.
Pontiacs and a nuke.
Pontiacs, yes, yes, the cars, of course. Who was your favorite character in this movie? One that stood out to you?
I actually really liked the daughter, the daughter of ScarJo's character. I thought that was a really interesting character. And
Yeah.
I think the the scene with one of the black and white scenes where they're at the film school and
Yeah.
they've got what's his name, the Green Goblin guy. I'm blanking on
Willem Dafoe.
They got Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
They got Willem Dafoe there. I mean, that was brilliant, and I think I might actually need you to break that one down for me because I felt like I wasn't fully capturing because that was an interesting scene. I don't know if we're quite there. I mean, I'll be interested to get your take on that.
Yeah, yeah. So he was such a good character, and it was so true. And you're right. I do have an insight into that because it's like the Lee Strasberg Actor Studio, or like Stella Adler, and he's supposed to be Lee Strasberg, but he's he's like okay, people, now you will fall asleep. So much happens when you're sleeping. You're still active when you're sleeping, right? You are breathing, your heart is beating, you're still sleeping. So sleep. And then they all sleep like in a very actory way.
That one guy that did the sleepwalk.
Yeah. Yeah. That guy was good. So that guy that does that is Fisher Stevens. Fisher Stevens is he's in a bunch of movies from the 80s. He was in, he was not a child actor, but he was in a lot of 80s movies. And then he won the best documentary Oscar a few years ago for something he did. I think he did that awful movie, The Cove, about the dolphins, which I'll never see. But he
our friend Corey Drayton worked on that film too.
Really?
Yeah, he was one of the DPs or the DP, I think.
Oh no,
he'll have to check me on that. But yeah, he worked on that, so he's experienced that one like hard in the gut.
God, how could he ever do anything again after that? That's oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's crazy. well, Fisher Stevens was the director, I think, of that one. My favorite character in the whole movie is probably the smallest role, and it was Matt Dillon as the mechanic.
Oh my god, yeah,
so good, dude. He was
great.
He was so good. So we just did an analysis of The House That Jack Built, which is Lars von Trier's film about a serial killer. And that also is a kind of a meta movie, but Matt Dillon is the tour de force in that movie. He's so good. And there was a lot of this. Hold on, let me see if I can act it for you. There was a lot of this in the movie. Right? There's a lot of like eyes coming off of nowhere. The alien did it. Yeah. yes, exactly. The alien did it. Bryan Cranston did it. Remember, Bryan Cranston comes on. Is this my scene?
In the color, in the full Technicolor part. He's in no other part.
Am I acting?
Am I not in this scene?
And they had the handler. There was like a handler. that was in a lot of scene. He had, he had aviator shades on, and he's most notable in the scene where Schwartzman meets Scarlett Johansson. He's the guy in the corner, like of the diner.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
remember because the girl that you like, the girl says, "Have you ever been shot? Have you ever been shot in battle?" And the guy looks up and then looks back. Yes, my dad has taken many bullets. Right, he's got one on the
Show
back
him
of
the
his head.
shrapnel.
Yeah. So I liked Matt Dillon's character. I like Willem Dafoe. Edward Norton, I thought was interesting in this.
Me too.
Yes. Oh, Conrad Earp. That's his name. Of course, it's Earp. Because he writes plays about the American West. And so, what did you think about that? What did you think about the play within the play and the way the playwright was presented there? What did you think?
It's a pretty it's really well written, I'll say. It's really well written because and it's hard to pick up on one watch. I mean, you know what's going on, but after you've watched it a couple times, it's like, oh, we're dealing with like three layers of meta here, basically. You've
Yeah.
got the story of the director, writing it and looking for help and trying to find the right actor and doing the thing with Willem Dafoe's scene and all the students there, and oddly, like some of the people that end up in the play and in the meta part are students in there.
Yes.
They're mixing and matching all this stuff. And I like what you said earlier about I haven't seen the Barbie movie yet, but Spore's seen it. She's told me about it. I watched your stream about it. And I've seen, the trailers and stuff. So I really like felt that same like drastic difference between the first layer of meta at the beginning of the film where Bryan Cranston is laying it out and then Edward Norton lays out the scene. And Edward Norton, when he lays out the scene, he says he actually describing like you would see on a script, like what's stage right, what's stage left, what's in the distance, and what the practical scenery is there. And then
Yeah.
as soon as it cuts to the full technicolor, it's just like bam, it's like you've popped through some sort of membrane, this black and white, old-timey playwright feel into this just amazing like 4K, stark sort of Roswell-esque in the 50s feel, and then
Yes.
the camera does exactly what Edward Norton said it was gonna do, basically, and it shows in those 90-degree sweeping motions and spinning motions that you were describing there. And the other thing that was really neat was, you can feel in the background, there's like a place in the horizon in the background where it's like, okay, that's where Wile E. Coyote would slam into a wall because that's a flat picture. But then there's these effects later in the film where you'll see a car like drive past that point where you're thinking it's a flat surface. So I have no idea how they made that look the way that it did and act the way it did. It felt very practical effect and not as computer generated as most
Yeah.
films. But at the same time, it had that, back to your question, it had that I'm in, Barbie land now, or I'm popped out of Barbie land into the next level of meta, which is interesting because that's where he actually does meet Margot Robbie later in the film.
Yeah, so great points. I mean, Barbie, that is the setting for Barbie, right? So she's in Barbie world, and then when she goes to the real world, I mean, it is plasticine, right? It's doll-like. Everything's compartmentalized and everything's fake, but they're in their world. And then she goes to the real world, which is like a completely three-dimensional world. And so that puts it in Barbie land. And like you said, it's awesome that you brought up Wile E. Coyote because it's Acme world as well, with the cars chasing. Like you said, there's constant like there's always something in the background, right? There's always like, first of all, you have the cactus that's framed like in center of the frame
Yeah.
for every shot. But then you have, and that's a still, but then you have this car chase with these like 50s greasers being chased by the cops and then the cop on the motorcycle bike. And the Roadrunner is in the movie. I mean, it was a version of a Roadrunner, but did you see
Yeah.
the little bird that
Yep.
crosses the front and it's at the end of the movie and it kind of gives a meet me. Um
It does at the very end.
yeah. And it's also this is obviously the movie is supposed to be a take on Area 51, right? Because there's a general that shows up, played by Jeffrey Wright. He's also fantastic because he plays Jeffrey Wright. For the folks at home, Jeffrey Wright is he's in Source Code, Jake Gyllenhaal's Source Code, where he plays a DARPA guy. He's in Hunger Games, but my favorite role of his is either in the reboot of Shaft. He plays the bad guy with Bateman. Remember Christian Bale was in that, or when he plays Basquiat, he was great as Jean-Michel Basquiat in the '90s movie with David Bowie. But he comes on, and you can tell he's an actor, right? Even though he's the general, because he says stage one. Let me tell you a story. And he's like, my great grandfather went off to the Great War. It was the war to end all wars. It didn't, right?
He came home in a pine box with a flag on top.
That's right. Yeah. When the alien lands, he's the one who goes to grip his weapon, right? I don't know about this. So it's Area 51. We see Jeffrey Wright later on at a press conference. I used it for the thumbnail, and you can see the satellite dishes in the background. So they add those as the film goes on. They become like SETI, the SETI program. And the movie has all of the like tropes of a Wes Anderson movie because it's got all of the, like he says, when the alien comes down and puts the asteroid back at the end of the movie, he says it's been inventoried. Right? So everything in the movie is inventoried. They're all the little props. There's so many props in the movie, but it does look like some sort of virtual world green screen because, like Hesher brought up at the beginning, we're seeing this through the eyes of the playwright, right? This Conrad Earp character. Now, Conrad Earp, the Edward Norton character who's writing the whole play, is obviously supposed to be a Tennessee Williams character. He's in his bathrobe, his smoking jacket. He's got his cigarette, and he's the way he describes everything. So the American West was a place, and he's got this whistle as he talks. And then later on, there's even a scene where Jason Schwartzman, who is trying to get the role as the lead, comes in, and there's a Skittles scene between those two, and that's how he gets the role. Remember, he comes in, he's like, well, I played Bugle Boy number 9 in that film. Then he takes his pants off, and
yeah,
right away when he came into the scene and he said he played the Bugle Boy number 9 or whatever, I went, oh, here we go. Because I've told people about that happened with one of my friends in drama school trying to get a role in a movie that Spevin Casey was producing. And that same thing happened to him, except my friend said, fuck off, you poofter.
Of course.
Anyway, but that, and Tennessee Williams died young, pills and alcohol, in his 50s, pills and alcohol. And so the same sort of thing is described as happening to him. In fact, he dies at the end of the film. That's not really a spoiler or giveaway. I mean, that's just what happens. But also the movie functions as Jason Schwartzman's. We're really inside the character of Jason Schwartzman, trying to find how he's supposed to embody this character in the film. So all of the all the other struggles and personality struggles that happen in the rest of the film are sort of seen through his eyes, through the playwright's eyes, through our eyes, through the TV lens. And one thing that I think I realized on the second viewing is that this a sequel. This movie is it seems like a sequel to me. It seems like a sequel to Rushmore, because Max Fisher, who's Jason Schwartzman in that movie, has the same type of monologues in that film. He's the centerpiece of the film, and now he's grown up and he's got a family, and it's like this is him acting in the film. So even though the thing is set in the 50s, because we're watching a TV version of the play being rehearsed, who's to say we aren't in present day, that he's not an actor in present day, if that makes sense. There's so many layers of meta in this that it's kind of hard to comprehend.
Yeah, it really is. And that speech you mentioned that Jeffrey Wright does, when and also the scientist lady who played the scientist,
Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, Tilda Swinton. They both did the same it was very interesting to me as someone who appreciates microphones and, trying to figure out how to best project voice, because they did it from 3 positions. They started at a podium, and it had, a certain sort of stadium sound to it, or, maybe like a church sound to it. And then they would do the first part like Jeffrey Wright did that first part where, grandfather comes home in a pine box with a flag on top, and then he moves up front to another microphone that's below camera lens, and that guy that looks like M. Night Shyamalan's son, maybe it is, I don't know, comes
Yeah.
running
Okay.
over and pulls an extra microphone up into frame right in front of him, and then you get like stadium sort of audio processing, and he does a second part of the speech, and then he moves off to the side, and you just hear like room echo instead, and finishes the speech. And the scientist lady did the exact same thing, so I thought that was sort of a strange but maybe telling hint that you're in a triple meta, basically, as the messaging is coming at you, because you've got the actor trying to figure it out, and that thing you mentioned about Schwartzman's character, like, there is this whole, and you also have to keep in mind, like, he's been doing this play every night for like a month or 2 months or something like this, and he still doesn't understand the existential factor of the person that he's playing.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. And I think that they, because they're in this post nuke, postmodern landscape where there's all these people, but they're in the middle of the desert. And they make a point of, Steve Carell's in the movie, and he makes a point of saying that, all of those things out there are lots, right? And you can buy your real estate lot, and it accrues for 50 years or whatever. And then at the end of it, your loan is paid off. And you buy the real estate lot from a vending machine, right? So it's like another compartmentalization, right? Inside the vending machine.
Yeah.
And so there's this arid desert all around them, and everyone in the movie is looking for meaning. They're all looking for connections, establish relationships with each other and meaning. And none of them really seem to find it. Tom Hanks, Tom Hanks's character kind of has it, like, because at the beginning of the film, they call him on the phone and they're like, "Have you told them?" And before anything else that he's talking about, "Have you told them about your mother's death?" Or about his wife's death. And I just knew that because it was so obvious that he's got this son and these 3 daughters, and there's no wife with him, and it's 1955.
Yeah.
So obviously that's going to be his father-in-law. And of course, he's he's Arch-Episcopalian. He's on the golf course, and he wears golf shoes throughout the entire movie with a 38 in his waistband. And come on, tell these witches we got to get going here. It's the 3 granddaughters.
You're not gonna leave my daughter in the ground between
Right.
2 trailers.
Yes. I knew your old agent. I went to law school with him, he says to Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, that was kinda, I thought it was a little,
That was a little odd.
it was a little in your face to have Tom Hanks, like, kinda creeping on ScarJo like that, the
Mhm.
character that he was playing in the play he was playing. It was
Right.
a double meta, like, Tom Hanks creep that was like, "Oh, I'm surprised you
Right.
guys did that after all the bad press."
Right. Well, there's another creeper in the movie, and that's Liev Schreiber, who is in the movie and has this weird thing going on with his son. We can't say too much, but has something weird going on with his son. I could not figure out his character. I didn't know what was going on with his character. His son is the one who built the death ray, right?
Right.
And his son is also the one who, there's one scene where his son says, like, "I'm just trying to figure out where I am in the universe. Why do I matter?"
The dare me kid, right? He's like, "Dare me to do
Right.
this, dare
That's
me to
right.
do that, dare me to do this
Yeah.
stupid thing, and, like, jump off a roof, dare me to do it," and they'd be like, "Why would you do that?" He says, "It's an experiment," and Liv's character kinda finally has had enough. He's got this
Yeah.
brilliant teenage son who has built a death ray that the US government now owns, because they brought the, like, top 5 science fair kids, which is, saying it lightly, because we've got one guy that can project onto the moon images, a guy with a death ray, a guy with a jetpack. What did the girl make? I can't remember what that girl made, but
Yeah, with Chad Jong-un, right? Ricky Cho. And
yeah.
and they even interrogate him. So there's for the folks at home, there's a group of kids that are geniuses. They're the brainiacs, right? The kids called Brainiac.
Yeah.
They're the brainiacs, and they play word games. They play memory association games, right? Paracelsus, Lord Kelvin, right? And what was I going to say? One of them is this character named Ricky Cho, and they even interrogate him because he published the only article about the alien that comes out of the alien visitation, and it was in his school newspaper,
Right.
right? And they say, "How did you get to? How did you get to? I don't know, But I thought that was interesting because God, there's taking such a circuitous route through this play because there's so many characters. But one thing that happens is when there's the alien visitation, which is we would know is the actors watching the alien visitation. So it's staged. It's literally staged, right? Later on, we see Adrian Brody's character who has like the prop for the alien spacecraft, and then they say, "Did you get the green?" And the lights turn green in the theater.
Yep.
And Adrian Brody is supposed to be. He's dressed and he acts like he would be like a Montgomery Clift or a Brando character because he lives at the theater. Right. They say for all 178 performances, he lived in the prop room, right?
Yeah.
Except for Dark Nights when he lived in the governor's suite of the whatever Peabody Hotel. But yeah, so it's all a staged performance, and you remember the scene where he's boxing like the invisible? It's invisible, so they're all everything is we don't know. We're breaking fourth and fifth and ninth walls through meaning. We don't know what's real and what's not. And in fact, the whole thing is staged, but that is I'm not sure it's a satire on the alien thing. I think it's a weird kind of light parody / promotion of the fact that the people are watching the alien visitation, but it's all produced and staged and goes and filters through layers of meaning before it even gets to us on the outside. And it's brilliant that one of the things Jeffrey Wright, the general, says is that we're gonna take this, we're gonna hermetically seal all the evidence for 100 years, right, which is 36,500 days, and the only thing that leaks out is a kid putting it in a high school newspaper, which discredits the entire thing. It's like a fantasy made up by a child, right? So no one on the outside would believe the alien thing, even if it was to be believed in the first place. So we don't know watching it what's true or what's real and what's not real.
Yeah, and remember the kid subverted a government quarantine to get that message out to his school paper buddy.
That's right.
He had to do his own psyop on the officer, I don't know what branch of office that was supposed
That
to
guy,
be.
oh, the Navajo wind talker.
Yeah, like the reservation
Yeah,
officer.
yeah.
With the M1, but he said, I need to would you please put this dime in the payphone?" And the guy was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, yesterday I didn't have enough money and the operator put me through and I just don't like the idea of defrauding the phone company." So the guy
Yeah.
just throws it in there, but then there's this wire that the kids had lined from the payphone, which took them outside the government quarantine zone, and they put the scoop in the school paper.
Right. So he's in a way live streaming through the Quarantinqua,
Yeah.
trying to expose the evidence, right? Um, and it's pretty brilliant how they do that scene. Also, I thought that one scene was a nod. Was obviously I thought I don't know if it was obvious, but I thought it was supposed to be a kind of a nod to Doctor Strangelove because when he's trying to get in to make the payphone call, it was kind of like in Doctor Strangelove when he says, "I need the change from that machine." And the guy says, there's no way I'm going to let you steal money from the Coca-Cola Corporation, right?
Yeah.
There's no way I'm going to make, he says something about Coca-Cola and he's got to, anyway, um, the Tilda Swinton scene I thought was interesting because she kind of plays a counterpoint to Jason Schwartzman's character. He's got a family, but no wife. And she ends up with all the kids as a kind of mother figure in terms of the greater science project that's going on. But there's no man, there's no husband. And she mentions, like, I think at one point she mentions how she has no husband and she wishes she had made a connection. And there's I tried to one thing I tried to get a handle on was, first of all, I thought Steve Carell was not I thought he was miscast in this movie. And that's interesting because seeing The Office and Steve Carell and various things, I thought, you would think he would be perfect for a Wes Anderson movie, like his attitude, but essentially he was just playing himself. And I thought he was kind of the weakest character in the thing. Um, I didn't think he really fit in, except for when they were in the scenes where he's selling he's got the machine for the martinis, and he's got all the vending machines. Did you notice all the glyphs, the like petroglyphs on the wall behind them, which was obviously supposed to be like they're in the West? But I tried to make sense of some of the petroglyphs to see if there was any symbolism. One of them, there was one rune in the center, but the only other thing I thought was, remember that band, what's it called? Einstürzende Neubauten, right? That you remember that band is like an 80s industrial German. Einstürzende Neubauten.
Yeah.
They, I
It's
thought,
on the
is
tip
that
of my tongue. I actually just saw one of their songs recently. Dang it. Is it
yeah,
Liebach? Is that Liebach?
yeah, I don't know. I just remember
Okay.
seeing them when I was 9 years old, and I would get I would get these catalogs to order posters and T-shirts from some. I don't know what this was, but it would have T-shirts from them and KMFDM and Nine Inch Nails, like with all these other bands in the catalog. Kids, yeah, because when you were a kid in the 80s and 90s, you had to order your T-shirts from the. Yeah, so Real John Connor says, Oster's in the Oster's in the Ginbachshem and the Neobauten. How could I forget? Okay. All right. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Liebach says thank you. Liebach is a different band. All right.
Right. Well, I pulled up a bunch of articles. I saw numerous articles on this, and I thought I would take a look with you through some of these articles. We're not going to read all of them, but just to see what these people have to say about it. Because one thing that this is sort of the normie review articles had to say about this, I couldn't believe it. One I came across said that this movie was a statement on. It said something about 90s postmodern angst, and I couldn't believe it said that, because that was my take on Wes Anderson's films in the first place when we did Rushmore, was that there's this strange thing, especially pre-Big Nine event, where we get Rushmore, and Royal Tenenbaums is around that area, but where we don't see there's nothing wrong in the world, in the greater world, right? Everything seems to be hunky-dory, but these characters are filled with a kind of angst that drives the force of the plot and the narrative in those movies. And then later on, the reason that I haven't watched Wes Anderson films in a while now, after Steve Zissou, after Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, which is like 2005, is that it annoys me that all this stuff is happening in the world, especially in the last, 3 to 7 years, right? And that we're still seeing these movies about this colorized, sweet plastic universe. And that annoys me, that it's like it alienates me from seeing that. I'm not saying that artists need to follow trends or anything like that, but it annoys me that he's still going on with this vision. And so I saw this movie a little differently, because it's not taking now's problems, but it is kind of a take on the 50s, when again, nothing is like it. The war is over, right? And America is at its sort of peak in terms of the average family, and money and real estate, cars, and all that stuff, right? Golden age, 1950s America. But the characters are filled with such dread, right? So what do you want to do? You want to take a look at some of the documents? I got the documents here, folks. All right. So let's pull up one of them here. And this one is let's see. Let's pull up this one, Bombshells. So this is Bombshells, Asteroid City, and Henry Adams in the Age of Barbenheimer. Okay. So this one's kind of interesting. I just sort of glazed, through this one. I want to get your take on this. So let's see if I can read. I'm going to read parts of this pretty quickly. We're in the midst of Barbenheimer. This is from this past summer. We've been in the midst of Barbenheimer since at least Wes Anderson's Asteroid City hit theaters back in June. But Barbenheimer is older than June, even. Barbenheimer is the shape of the modern age, all the way from Jamestown, shouts out VA, to this past weekend's manufactured showdown between Barbie and Oppenheimer. Historian Henry Adams' 1907 effort, The Education of Henry Adams, contains that somewhat famous, somewhat arcane declarative, all the steam in the world could not like the Virgin Bill shot. Okay. Adams wrote this line in his chapter, The Dynamo and the Virgin, which is about Adams' visit to the Great Exposition in 1900 in Paris. An experience that haunted Adams, much like everything haunted Adams. Okay. So this is just prior to 1901 and the modern era. This is pre death of Queen Victoria in 1901. But this is a guy on the edge of industrialism and the modernist push. He hailed from a line of presidents and was an intellectual figure of the 19th century who anticipated and fretted over what the 20th century might bring to bear. The industrial age and the scientific discoveries at the time had left him feeling unmoored. He acknowledged there was no real center prior to Yeats saying it, right? The center cannot hold, the falcon cannot hear the falconer, in his poem, The Second Coming. And he felt lost before Hemingway's ambulance and wine tours. He was ahead of his times precisely because he was a man of his own time. And then just quickly here, the quote here is, as he grew accustomed to the great gallery of machines, he began to feel the 40-foot dynamos as a moral force. Much as the early Christians felt the cross, the planet itself seemed less impressive in its old-fashioned, deliberate, annual, or daily revolution than this huge wheel revolving within arm's length at some vertiginous speed and barely murmuring. That's like the train going at the beginning of the film. Scarcely humming an audible warning to stand a hair's breadth further for respective power while it would not wake the baby lying close against its frame. Among the thousand symbols of ultimate energy, the dynamo was not so human as some, but it was the most expressive. And then this talks about how the afterglow of that speech. And then going further down here, it says Barbenheimer is a cinematic event that largely hinges on the coincidence that two films with two different styles or two different subject matters were released at the same time into the material world. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer features an obvious dynamo, a nuclear bomb, and Greta Gerwig's Barbie, another, although not quite to scale. And then it says down here, both cinematic bombshells have been gendered according to the symbols of the culture at large. Oppenheimer is a male historical figure, and Barbie's a female doll. Give a little further on in this paragraph. Given the history and institutions involved, both controversies appear now as terrible miscalculations that could only occur in a world that is far too online, and each film will likely continue to catch stray bullets from an entrenched culture war in which no one acknowledges that buying a ticket and sitting in a theater is an individual choice, that no one forces anyone to the movies, that Regal Cinemas cannot draft you to their theaters, especially in an age of streaming services, social media, and video games. And then later on, what does this have to do with Wes Anderson's Asteroid City? Okay, it says Anderson's whole style roots itself in the ennui Adams describes feeling before the dynamo. The planet itself seemed less impressive in its old-fashioned, deliberate annual or daily revolution. His films are full of mourning, not just for a lost parent or friend, but through his carefully assembled sets. Another age entirely. Right, and then we go on to talk about the rest of Barbenheimer. But what do you think? I mean, I know that was a lot, but what do you think about that in terms of the kind of cultural like framework that they're giving this? I mean, one thing is, talking about like, how we've got this massive physical dynamo right at the beginning of the 20th century, and then in mid 20th century, there's the nuclear age and the nuclear bomb. But now, what's the dynamo now? What's the big dreadful thing now on the horizon?
Well, the thing that's not being really talked about in there is the artificial intelligence and that sort of, moment of ubiquitous computing, that thing we're on the precipice of, arguably in the near future.
Yeah.
But I like what you're saying there about, because I felt that way too. I felt like I kind of had to force myself to watch Wes Anderson films after Life Aquatic. And,
Yeah.
no, I don't dislike any of them, I don't think, but I see what you mean. Like it's alienating in a sense because it creates like a a semi-sterile version of a period of time that is, now sort of long gone. But I can relate to how you're feeling about Asteroid City also because, maybe and I'm just, making shit up here, but maybe Wes Anderson's at a point where he's feeling the dread of that same dread that's being discussed in the article there, where it's like he's, maybe he's looking forward like many of us are and going, wow, there's a singularity and a fourth industrial revolution and a globalization happening, and my very industry is no longer the same. We're not going to have any more. He arguably is directing something like this at a time when these might be the last big Hollywood stars. Like it's all TikTokers from here on out. It's all, algorithm fed fame and fortune from here on out, perhaps, as we transition from this, older television style and internet 1 and 2.0 style into that next realm where, he himself may be obsolete. A chat GPT might be able to write. This is not an insult to Wes Anderson or any schooled actors and actresses out there, but that is the big debate of our time, right? Like
Yeah.
how utilized can this be? And it's interesting to see him kind of taking because the the psychological operations, the military industrial complex, the alien topic, and how that has evolved from Roswell to where we are right now, where governments are participating openly in spreading this narrative. These are a lot of the things that have propped up our concept of what it means to be an American or, anywhere else in the world, in the post World War II, what it means to be industrialized, what it means to have power, energy in our homes, and also the power to potentially wipe up, a nation off the face of the earth. Like these are paradigm shifting moments and pillars, the long poles in our tent of our, certain epoch. But,
Yeah.
maybe this is, I don't know, maybe Wes sees this change coming and is now having to kind of, re-engage with all this. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great take, especially bringing in the strike that's happening right now. I mean, that just as one element of what you talked about. I mean, because he's making the film. So he wrote the film with Roman Coppola, right? And Roman Coppola is the either the brother or the cousin of. I think she's the brother of Sofia Coppola, and we've done Lost in Translation here, Sofia Coppola's movie. But it's interesting that they wrote the film, and I know that certain scenes were written during the Quarantiqua, during Karanka, especially coming up with Scarlett Johansson's character. So you can tell that that informs the film because, like you said, when else are you going to be able to get all of these actors in one film? You never know when it'll come again, right? And one interesting thing, and but they don't know that this. I suppose they don't know the strike is coming in the future. Maybe they did at that point. Maybe there were inklings of it. But now it's over, right? You couldn't do this now. And in fact, Bill Murray was supposed to be in the film, but something happened with Karanka, so he couldn't play. He was supposed to play the character of Jock Larkings, who is the head of basically the Carnegie Endowment Ford Foundation Larkings Institute, right?
Oh, okay.
That funds the whole thing because he's been in the last like 9 Wes Anderson movies, so he's
Yeah.
notably absent from the movie. But that again informs what you're saying because it's like all of these people are available unless this thing happens that they don't have any control over, right? But that they're pushing and everything else. And so maybe you're saying this is a take on, you know, the unpredictability of the future from outside events because like you were talking about, I mean, the fact that it represents sort of uh these the strata of society, right? Where we have the stargazers, the smart kids, we've got the weird kids, we've got the single parents, the families, the scientists, the religious guy. I mean, all these people are in this. right? But they are all controlled, even through what they see. There's even a line in this like, no, I saw it, right? When the alien comes, and they still are controlled, and they're not even allowed to leave, which plays against the fact that we see the police car constantly coming in and out of frame. They can go wherever, right?
Yeah,
But
there's an outlaw and cops that seem to be buzzing through there.
yeah, good point. There's an outlaw, there's cops, there's military people that come and go. There's a kind of a garrison National Guard that guards them, but they seem like outsiders in the movie. Like, where did these, like you were saying, where does this guy come from?
Yeah.
And the way that they handle it, in a way, is to go like inside of themselves, right, and into the meta world of the play, which is interesting, into the black and white world. And like you were saying, I mean, you were making that point about the stark difference between the black and white world and the colorized world, which is like a Wizard of Oz, which is like Wizard of Oz-esque in the movie, except for this, they're literally going from like a stage into the world. So that there's also something to be said for the fact that there's this existential crisis with all these actors, and they can't access feelings inside themselves, even though the whole thing is built on feelings because they're actors. So everything they do is about feeling.
Right.
Right.
And the
You know,
director doesn't seem to care either, because Jason's character comes to the director and he says, "I don't understand. Why is he feeling this way? What is my motivation?" And the
right.
director was like, you're doing it. This is it. This is it right here. It's sort of like there's no answer to the question.
That's right. He did, and he did literally say that. Right.
Right
That there
before
is.
he went and talked to Margot Robbie's character.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, because he breaks the, not only the rehearsal wall, he breaks the fourth wall, and he walks out. That's the only point in the movie where he walks from within the movie into, we see the stage, and then we go from the stage outside of the stage to the outside world, which is still staged because we see the like Broadway lights behind him. And that was interesting because he goes and talks to the Margot Robbie character, who's supposed to be his wife, and they're on opposite sides. They're on fire escapes from two different buildings.
Right.
So again, here's everybody's favorite word that I use. There's an abyss between them. Also, when he goes back inside, isn't it Matt Dillon that comes out afterwards?
Matt Dillon comes out.
Yeah.
Hey, you
Hey,
missed your cue.
Yes. What one thing about Matt Dillon's character is, so Matt Dillon, everybody, plays the mechanic, and he's great because he is like, he plays the alpha dog, right? There's this family, they go to the mechanic, the car's broken down, and he's like, he gives this matter-of-fact statement about, we haven't seen this one in a long time, not since that last car, and he shows the carcass of the car. Later on, we see all these cars piled up, but he's like, it takes this one little piece, and he screws it in, and notice that the piece that he screws into the car is the same piece that the alien rides down on. When, remember, he comes on the little telescopic like fire pole,
Kind of like a modified wing nut or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, a little widget
Yeah.
sprocket thing, right?
Exactly.
This one little sprocket can fix this whole machine. I did think it was funny how the animation with the alien occurs, because what happens is they're in the crater and they all have to put on this cardboard box with a mirror inside of it with these three lights, and they see the three blinking lights, which reminded me of the three blinking lights in It, right? From the demonoid spaceship or whatever, the thing.
Yeah.
And then there's a green light. It made me think of how ridiculous it was in school when they would take us outside and they would say, okay, we can look at the solar eclipse today. Put this shoebox on your damn head. And like, you'd never see shit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
The only time that's worked without the shoebox is there was a solar eclipse in like 2016. It was probably 2016. And I remember walking on the sidewalk and seeing the eclipse in the shadows on the sidewalk. So there were little sun. It was like refracted through the trees, and there were little. So I didn't have to look up. But the damn thing with the fucking shoebox really
So
pissed me off.
stupid. Yeah, that was lame. What a waste of our
Yeah,
time.
yeah, because the teacher would always go, "Okay, cut the holes in the shoebox and then look at the sun." And it's like, what's the difference between just looking? I'm just looking through a singular hole in the damn anyway.
Maybe
But
there was there a commentary on that? Because remember the
there
scientist lady,
had to be.
she's like, "Don't take the box off or it'll burn into your
Yeah.
irises." And then they show her like close up later and you can see the 3 dots in her
Yes,
iris.
it had to be. It had to be that this stupid thing. Um, and when the alien, I did think it was funny that the alien is like a hexagonal microchip looking thing, right?
Yeah.
That spins, it comes down, it's green. Also, it's green. There have been a number of streams we've done where we always see green with something otherworldly. We saw it in Frankenstein, saw it in Dracula, the green vapor. There's a number of them. And so we see this green emerald come down, and then the alien comes out of the bowels, right, of the alien ship, of course, because they're
Yep.
fake and gray, and then comes down, rides on this telescopic thing, and his legs are too long. And I like how they did this because the alien suit, and it's, by the way, it's Jeff Goldblum who's playing the alien, of
I
course.
was wondering when we were gonna address the
Right,
Goldblum factor.
right. Because he has no lines in the movie.
Oh,
He's got like one line, right? And
yeah.
he's sitting
Only
there
only
like,
backstage. That's his
yeah.
one line.
So this animated, so it's an animation within a fantasy film, within a film, within a film. I mean, there's so many layers. But the alien comes down and reaches down, grabs the asteroid out of like a bird cage, and and this was funny. So Conrad Steenbeck, that's his name, Conrad or whatever his name is, Steenbeck. Okay, and I'll
Yeah.
get
Yeah,
that in
yeah.
a second. But he's the war photographer, Jason Schwartzman character, and he picks up his camera like this. And remember, the alien has the asteroid and goes
Yep.
and poses with it, and then went up. And I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Also, so I was thinking, who is Schwartzman's character based on? Because he's wearing a safari jacket, he's got a beard, he's wearing a false beard throughout the thing. He's smoking a pipe. One thing that was annoying was they keep smoking a pipe with a Zippo lighter. Remember, he runs out of fluid and he hands it, and Matt Dillon fills it up with the gasoline.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but that annoyed me because I don't smoke a pipe or anything, but like, you can't smoke a pipe with a Zippo. You're inhaling the lighter fluid from the Zippo. You would have, that's why they light matches, pipe with match. Anyway, but I guess that he got that from being a war photographer. And I thought, who is he based on? Is this based on like Ian Kershaw or one of these guys who covered Germany in the 20, in the big war, part deux? And then I thought, no, it's John Steinbeck, obviously. So it's a take on John, because John Steinbeck was a war correspondent. And they're out west, right? And that brings up this whole sort of dust bowl that they're in. They're literally in a dust bowl.
Yeah.
And of course, this sort of existential nothingness that occurs in his books. And I'm not saying his books are bad. I'm saying that that's one of the feelings of dread that you kind of are inherent in his books. People always say, by the way, it was a mistake that John Steinbeck won the Nobel Prize for Literature. They said it was a mistake that year. He was nominated and they gave it to him as an error.
Really?
Or because they last minute were angry at one of the other nominees, so they gave it to him. Because, I mean, Of Mice and Men is a very short book. Grapes of Wrath is a longer book, but Of Mice and Men is a book about, Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole scouring the countryside looking for women to kill. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what the book is about. Um, so Scarlett Johansson is interesting in this because
Hey, hold
she
on,
is,
hold that thought. Hold that.
yeah.
Something just popped in. You're talking about like Steinbeck and the just this weird existential dread, and we've also discussed like ScarJo's character and Jason his character not being able to have emotions, and
Mm.
did you notice that after the alien came, all of a sudden a number of people in the cast, a number of the characters, all of a sudden they were inspired. They had, you know what I mean? Like everybody's idea of existence and what it means was sort of anew, you know, like the kids are the teacher is trying to get the kids to learn about, you know, the 9 planets and, you know, all this Galilean stuff, and they're sitting there going, you know, I built a model of the spaceship. It's got a green light on it, and one of them even wrote a song, and like you know what I mean? Like there was
Yes.
this rush of meaning, or at least inquisitiveness about life and its meaning for a number of the characters. But then there were some like Tom Hanks's character and ScarJo's character and Jason's character, it didn't affect them at all. It was the
Yeah.
picture of a freaking alien holding a meteorite and smiling was no more interesting than a picture of ScarJo getting out of the shower.
That's a really good point. That's a really great point. In fact, I guess that's the whole reason for Scarlett Johansson and her naked scene in the movie is that she's emerging, she's emerging and he's seeing her across the distance. They're not even in the same bungalow. He sees her naked and it's through a mirror. I didn't realize that. So he sees, so we, the audience, see her naked standing in the mirror. So it's a kind of a seventh way
Yeah.
through the, point of view, seeing her just like when they put on the box and they're looking in the mirror, looking at the lights of the alien. And yeah, and you're right about the inspiration scene. I mean, because the son, the Brainiac, there's a point where he says to Jason Schwartzman, like, an alien came down here and visited Earth. We saw him. Don't you want to talk about what this means? And you're right. His mind is far off with the war or in the dirt with his wife that he let his daughters bury. Right.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so I guess what is that saying? That's saying that the people that existed on the other side of this divide, which would be the A bomb, which would be World War II, right? The older people exist in a completely different mode, a completely different mindset. Nothing shocks them. They've seen everything, and they are broken. For the most part, not I suppose not overall, but as a generalized statement, they are. But then the younger people are interested in it. But is that also because the older people are aware that they're acting in a play,
Yeah, maybe.
right? That it's
Right.
staged, and but the younger people are actors too. I mean, they're
Yeah.
literally, they're actors acting as actors.
No, you can literally, like, get lost in the meta aspects because it's so well written, you know, you're finding yourself inside part of the Technicolor scenes and then in, you know, shout out to our homie in the tech noir scenes, you
That's
know, like,
right. Yeah.
I look at that scene with Margot Robbie and you know, I think about our buddy there out on
Yeah.
IG, Tech Noir Graphics, because that's, you know, I'm like, "Wow, this is he had that term way before anybody else I've ever seen, and, like,
That's right.
there it is, like, displayed in a Wes Anderson film."
Yo, shouts out from Hesher to our friend Mixkey out there, to Tech Noir Graphics. Tech Noir Graphics. Hope you clip that. so, 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 Scar. There's one article I read about ScarJo and her character, and because there's something interesting that I thought about when watching this. She looks odd. Okay, so she is playing an older actress, and they did a great. I mean, she looks old, right? She's still beautiful, but she looks like an older actress. But one thing I noticed, this might be going too far, but is that in the scene where they're in the diner and he takes the picture of her, right? And she turns and she says, "I didn't give you permission to take my picture." She's got this mid-Atlantic,
Yeah.
standard American, dramatic actor studio accent, which was very good. It was very dialed in as far as that accent went. And I thought, is this Betty Davis? She's playing Betty Davis essentially, because in an article I read, she said that Betty Davis was an actress who, in terms of her career arc, was always comfortable with her in her own skin on film, which is a really unique thing to see in terms of acting. Like, for instance, Jason Schwartzman is not comfortable in his own skin in the film, but that's part of his character, we get a sense of who is he, who am I in the world, what am I doing, and we get that in Rushmore as well. But I think that's what separates him from other actors who are. I mean, look, like when you watch a Tom Cruise movie, Tom Coom was born to be in films, right? Kinko Reeves was born to be in films. He is comfortable in his skin on film. Whereas when you see pictures of him in his real life, he looks slightly uncomfortable, like he lives in another universe on celluloid. Scarlett Johansson's character is like comfortable there, but when you see her, when she turns and looks at the camera, her face is kind of this weird. It reminded me of the Alien Workshop skateboarding logo from the 90s, which is an alien.
Yep.
And then there's a close up on her face, and her eyes are very far up. They did something to her eyes. Her eyes are very far apart anyway. And she's got this kind of ovoid face. And I thought, that's the alien. That's the mask for the alien. There had to be some sort of inspiration for the alien mask that they used. And then that makes me think, is this because she's alienated from herself and from the rest of the, I mean, she can't have a connection with Jason Schwartzman, even though it's alluded to that they made love and that somebody walked into the room and he had to explain that away. But it's like, we don't even see that. We're alienated from that.
And she even brings up being alienated from all of her children. Like, she has a number of children with different fathers, it sounds like, that she does only sees occasionally, and that's right in there with probably, I mean, look at isn't Madonna one of those type of people, or
Right.
Angelina Jolie? Like, we've got a number of Hollywood actresses, not necessarily like 50s style where they're having, those two examples, they go off and get them from other countries. Maybe that's a discussion for another time. Thanks for liberating those kids, and bringing them to a great place, guys. Yeah, that's great. But you know what you just said made me think. I was trying to figure out, and you may have just answered the question. I honestly, I can't say that I noticed that about ScarJo, but now that you're saying it, I saw a similar thing happen with the Margot Robbie scene,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, "Wait a minute," because it was like they have the camera, far back for the majority of it. They're showing that abyss, like you're saying, two separate fire escapes. But then or right before Matt Dillon comes out and gets Steenbeck, the camera shifts to like right in front of her face. It's a close up. And I swore I was like, is that still her? I
Yeah.
wondered, did they put a different actress in there to was there something meta there that I missed? But now I'm wondering if they weren't just warping or using that same effect that you're talking about.
Yeah, they might have. You know that one of our people is friends with one of those Jolie Pitt kids. Our friend the Green Feathers, shout out to TGF out there, is friends with one of the Jolie Pitt kids. It's the one that starts with a Z, I think. There's one whose first name starts with a Z, but he's friends with with them.
Wow. All right.
Isn't
Well, I
that
hope I
crazy?
wasn't being too
No,
flippant
no, you
there.
weren't. No,
I'm
it's,
in
it's great.
trouble.
No, no, but I also like the scene where, because we see most of ScarJo's scenes are inside the bungalow, and we see her framed in. So she's framed in the shot, and then she's framed in a literal window frame, and she's
Yeah.
rehearsing for the play, right? I mean, we see her also in the train compartment. That was a great scene where she's in the train compartment. That scene where she's in the train compartment and the son walks in and talks to her. I thought my only thought in that whole scene was, man, trains were so cool back in the day. I
Right?
would look like it looks so cool, right? All the suitcases are lined up. It's very clean. There's a
Yeah.
sleeping bunk. Um, have you
No,
ever
no,
taken an overnight
no.
train before?
I haven't, and we've been trying to figure out, like, if it's even still cool. The last person I talked to that was on a train told me a story about almost getting rolled by some thugs, and I was like,
Yeah,
"Man, that sounds like riding the BART or the
yeah,
subway in New York or something." So I
yeah,
don't know. I never have, but I've always wanted to.
yeah. They have the Nightliner or whatever, the night train on Amtrak that goes right close to here. That I see, I'm like, oh my god, they got to go through here, but it's not cool. I've taken a few night trains, but the night train that I remember the most, and the whole time I was on it, I was thinking Guns N' Roses Night Train to myself.
Yeah.
Was I took a night train from Vienna to Denmark. And it was funny because I met up with one of my homeboys in Vienna. I was traveling for about a month by myself in Europe. This is spring of 2001, but pre Big Nine, and and I had about a month off from school, and I got an interrail pass and traveled all around. I walked across an entire country. I walked across Liechtenstein, which is like 5 miles, right into the border of Austria, and it was cool at the time because they just opened up the borders because of the euro. So you could just walk into another country. But I took that night train, and I had been to Mozart's house in Salzburg, right? And across the street there was a little shop, and I went in because they had switchblades in the window. So I went in and I bought a switchblade, right? And then when I got on this night train, they put me in a compartment. It was a sleeping compartment, and it had like 6 other people in there that were already asleep. You have to give over your passport to the train conductor and all this stuff. It was very weird.
Oh.
Um, but I was like, who are these other 6 people? Because it was dark. It was very shady. But I got in my little compartment in my little bunk, and I took my switchblade out of my pocket and I opened it up, and then I couldn't shut it, dude. It would
Oh,
not
no.
shut. And I spent like 4 hours on this night train, like, oh my gosh, I gotta figure out how to, because the next morning I was gonna get out and I was gonna have a switchblade open in my hand, and I had to get the passport back from the guy. And I'm like, I'm so fucked. Right. But finally I got it because it wouldn't unlatch. And so finally I got it shut, and everything was fine. But
User error or mechanical error? What did it end up
no,
being?
no, it was a mechanical. It was a mechanical error.
Oh,
The
that
damn thing
sucks.
would not shut. So I did
Man.
not open it again. But then, but then when I when I was leaving again, I had that, and I had just carry on. I had a backpack and I had carry on, and I was flying back from Zurich back to Belfast. And I remember I was in the airport, and the guy, I think this is pre Big Nine. And the guy said, we need to search your bags. So I said, okay. So he opened up the bag, and I had the switchblade, and he goes, what is this? And I said, it's a switchblade. And he goes, and what is it for? And I was like, I bought it in Austria. I'm taking it back with me. And he was like, okay, go ahead. And I just carried it on. I just had it in my pocket. Isn't that crazy? Pre Big Nine was a different world.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So anyway, so yeah, the actor studio, you brought that up earlier. The thing with Willem Dafoe, right?
Yeah.
And that's interesting because, I mean, when you see that, what were your thoughts about what was happening?
Oh, man, I don't know. I'm so far removed from, like, I've spent plenty of years in colleges, and all that stuff. It took me way more than 4 years to do all my degrees because I just, lollygag my way through them and change my mind multiple times and let life events interrupt stuff. But I never really, like, you'd have to ask Spore. Spore hung with the theater kids. I did
Mhm.
not. Like, to me, that is an alien realm. Like, seeing, that kind of portrayal of
Yeah.
what it's like of, my homie Matt Man too. He would probably relate better to that. So to me, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just sitting in the front row trying to understand this shit. But it kind of reminded me of like I don't know, like it had like a sketch comedy sort of feel to it a little
Mhm.
bit, but
Yeah.
there was definitely something way more academic and intellectual happening that's sort of outside my wheelhouse.
Well, there's supposed to be, but I'm not sure that there actually
Oh,
is
okay.
in
I'm
that
giving them
scene.
too much credit,
Yeah,
maybe.
you're giving him too much credit. So I mean, look, the actor studio. I guess it's obviously supposed to be actor studio. It's Willem Dafoe first of all, and Willem
Yeah.
Dafoe runs the. Willem Dafoe is part of this. I think he was part of Steppenwolf Theater Company. Steppenwolf is the big Chicago theater company, and he's black turtleneck. When you go to sleep, you're going to feel you're not asleep, right? You're not totally asleep. Your mind goes somewhere. I think that's a pretty good Willem Dafoe. Your mind goes somewhere,
That's pretty good.
right? and, and they all fall asleep. Well, this is very drama school slash. There was one thing. Okay, so for the folks at home, okay, So there was one thing that I had to do when I was in university in theater, and it was for this play Schweik, the Good Soldier Schweik, which is a play about World War One, and it was written by a guy who from it was translated again by a guy from Northern Ireland. And anyway, so we were doing the first production of this, and what they had us do was we had to be soldiers on a train in World War One, going from one place to another. And I still can't believe they did this. We had to all line up, and the director, he said, no, you're all going to be different. You're soldiers on the train, but you're not feeling it. I don't believe you're on a train. So we had to sit down, and you had a person in front of you, a person behind you, and we all had to we all had to go chugga 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 and move in the train. It's so stupid. But that is pretty much what they were doing in this scene. And I thought one other interesting thing is the sleeping thing, because when this scene came up, by the way, the movie, they talk about the date, and you had brought that up when we first talked about it, September 23rd, about all the events that happened on September 23rd. And I watched the movie accidentally on September 23rd.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but one of the things that occurred to me when I was watching that scene was that I had watched this movie late one night called Texas Killing Fields or something, right? It's got Sam Worthington, and it's kind of an inspiration for True Detective. I didn't know that when I watched the film, but there's a scene in the movie where the people all, it was nighttime in the movie, so they all went to sleep. And of course, when you watch someone going to sleep in a movie, you feel sleepy, especially if it's nighttime. So I started thinking about how, like, if I were writing a movie, or if I'm writing this book, I never consider sleeping scenes. I think it's a waste, right? And it's almost like a point in movies where people can't figure out what to do, so they have you go to sleep. And then I watched this movie, and I was just thinking about it, and then the sleeping scene occurs, and Willem Dafoe explains it right in the movie, which is to say that when characters go to sleep, they are not truly asleep, because they can't access anything else in their world. There's alienation between father and son, and father and daughters, and man and woman, and government and people, all these things. But when they go to sleep, they're sort of boundless. So it's an active thing when they go to sleep. And of course, they make it a ridiculous scene in the movie. But I thought that was interesting that they did that. I don't know. I'm still trying to get a handle on the
And
rest
what
of
was remind me? I'm blanking on it. I don't know. Maybe it's my mind refusing to accept neurolinguistic programming. I have certain blockades up. There was a phrase that they were all chanting over and over again. What was it?
You can't wake up if you don't go to sleep. You can't
Yes.
wake up if you don't go to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
which was again very drama school.
Okay.
Right? Because they all have a mantra, and then that's the way that they end it. But it ends that way because it's supposed to be this avant-garde postmodernistic, bullshit take on the way that the world ends. Like that, are they saying everyone's asleep, so you have to be awake to things? But they're also saying it's a natural end because by saying that and making it a kind of rhymed mantra, a continuous, the repetition makes you go to sleep. It's almost like programming,
Yeah.
in the film.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me wonder if there's any binary effect out there where you've got certain viewers that might, I don't know. I don't even want to go there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems like you said, it's just so like postmodern gobbledygook, like, art stuff. But then at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like there's a subtle NLP going on here, and a subtle, like, nudging towards, like, maybe it's the big sleep, and the coming into a new age, or in the sense of in the format of a play. It would be like, you're moving into act 3 or something,
Right.
or to the epilogue.
Yeah, you're right, in the chat there. They should have ended the film on that note. It would have been, because it would have been a book, and it would have been black and white.
Yeah.
Just like the beginning of the film. And also, Schwartzman's character kind of wakes up and says that, like he's woken up into who his character's supposed to be and what he's supposed to do in the play. And then, of course, Adrian Brody, by the way, comes off and he says I was in Marigolds and Maypothers next door. I'm available, by the way, right? Remember? Because he's the star actor, that's kind of like when Bradley, if you've seen Bradley Cooper when was in the actor studio, right, with James Lipton. Remember, remember the actor studio with
Yeah.
James Lipton? It
Yeah.
was a frivolous piece, I must say. So there's actually you can watch this, a clip of this, when Robert De Niro came to the actor studio to talk to the students. One of the people asking a question was Bradley Cooper. He was a student at the time. It's like late 90s. And then later on, Bradley Cooper, after his success, comes back and is on the stage, and James Lipton's like, one of our most endearing graduates. There's no frivolity here, right? Bradley Cooper, right? So it was kind of like that. But, Wes Anderson says the thing, Willem Dafoe says the thing, Adrian Brody says it, and then we have these sideways. We get Matt Dillon in color. You can't wake up if you don't.
Right.
So we have color and black and white mixed into one thing, which is interesting. And so I thought I would bring up. There's another article here. I'm trying to find the best ones here because there are a bunch of them. So this one's pretty short, and this one says, "Move over, Oppenheimer." Asteroid City. So let's look at this real quick. And this one says, move over, Oppenheimer. You should be watching Asteroid City with Barbie instead. Let's see what this one says. Okay, this is from Total Film.
Yeah.
July 26, 2023. So, it's the summer of Barbenheimer, aka cinema's hottest double bill. It consists of Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's biopic of the father of the atomic bomb, and Barbie, a bold pink-hued blockbuster from Greta Gerwig, which, by the way, is like smashed all records. It made over $1 billion, at the box office, which is they actually, which means something because it'll fund further films. Of course, they're not making any films now. As back-to-back viewings, many have argued that this duo makes an unlikely but appropriate pairing, polar opposites with surprising shared themes. But there's another movie that hit cinemas, and that's Asteroid City. Let's start off on a surface level. Both movies have distinctive visual styles with bright colors and vibrant, intricate production designs, which are used to denote settlements that are isolated from the world around them. That's a good point. In Anderson's film, it's Asteroid City, a remote desert town with a population of 87, inundated, it says it on the sign, inundated with a group of junior stargazers and space cadets for an astronomy convention. It's in Barbie, it's Barbie Land, a utopian cluster of dream houses where every Barbie is having the best day ever. That is until stereotypical Barbie starts having irrepressible thoughts of death, which is what happens in Asteroid City. Neither of these places feels real, and Asteroid City and Barbie both reckon with their own artifice. In Asteroid City, it's through its narrative framing device, the story of Augie, Woodrow, and company that we're watching is actually a play written by Conrad Earp. And the real world is black and white, juxtaposed with the technicolor of the desert. Asteroid City does not exist, Bryan Cranston's television host says as the film begins. It's the first line in the movie, establishing a blurred line between fiction and reality from the off. In Barbie, there's the divide between Barbie Land and the real world made literal through Barbie and Ken's voyage between the two via car, boat, plane, tandem bike, camper van, snowmobile, and roller skates. While Barbie is having thoughts of death, grief is at the center of Asteroid City. One of the junior stargazers, aka Brainiac, arrives in town with his 3 younger sisters and their father. We quickly find out that the newly widowed war photographer still hasn't told his kids that their mother died 3 weeks after the event. Barbie, too, reckons with her own mortality. Towards the end of the movie, she questions her future as a doll, expressing a desire to be something more than just an idea and pondering the potential of life as a human. Humans only have one ending, Barbie inventor Ruth Handler, which is interesting because Ruth Handler's daughter was Barbie, so her daughter was Barbie Handler, warns her. She accepts her fate regardless. An imagined future also hangs over Asteroid City, and towards the end of the movie, the actor playing Augie in the play storms off stage mid-performance. Hesher was just talking about this, decrying the fact that he doesn't understand it to the play's director. Heading outside for a smoke break, he encounters an actor performing at the theater next door who's also going for a cigarette, played coincidentally by Margot Robbie, right? Sydney Melbourne herself. Robbie's character was meant to portray Augie's late wife in the play, but the role was cut, and the pair recite the lines from their scene together in a disarmingly tender moment. There's sadness at the heart of the protagonist. Tilda Swinton says, everything's connected, but nothing's working, right? Artifice is a form of denial and a way of coping with grief, which both characters have to leave behind to move on, whether that's Barbie starting a new life in the real world or Augie driving away from Asteroid City. And finally, what Augie has left then in the end is his son Woodrow. And much like Gloria and Sasha, a strained parent-child relationship is healed slowly and carefully in Barbie movie Gloria and Sasha through an abnormal shared experience, restoring order to a society of living dolls and a close encounter of the third kind, respectively. While these two movies don't have much in common at first glance, peel back the curtain and there's a melancholy tenderness integral to both and a surprisingly catchy musical number. I thought that's a pretty astute, fairly astute commentary on these two films. What do you think about that?
Yeah, also they sort of subtly brought up Close Encounters there, and I thought there was a couple Close Encounters references in Asteroid City. Like, I thought it was interesting how they had that clock with the lights on it. The scientists had it, and they tell the Brainiac, "Oh, we don't know what that is. It's just it's just a bunch of lights." And he's like, "Well, it's a date. It's today's date." And again, that being 9/23 in the play, in the film, that's rehashing out every night.
Yeah.
Which is also weird that it rehashes out every night, because you kind of get the impression that the actors doing the play, they actually feel the length of their time being stuck
Yeah.
there, and you know what I mean. And that kind of to me, I recognize that as like them. Okay, this is my 125th performance of this. It's at this part in the show. I actually feel like I'm being locked down in some way. But anyways, I the kid was the one that could read the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Just this impossible, like, fantastical Close Encounters style thing, where it's like there's a person that knows it's coming, and instead of it being the scientist guy or the farmer plumber guy, it's the kid, and the actual scientist can't see it. And then remember when they stole her equipment, she was also like, she pulled him aside, and there was kind of that creepy conversation where she's like, "I want to be your mentor, we can contact the UFO together," and this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But it's like she's not smart enough to read the clock, and she represents the government scientist, and they're basically entrapping the smartest kids in the nation into giving them the greatest technology that they can come up with, and then the US government owns it, and then psyop or alien, thing. But anyways, I thought there was a Close Encounters allegory there,
Yeah,
something
for
connecting.
sure. So you're saying that the government thinks of the people as children, and then they build the platform, right? And then they take the platform and then use it and change it, right?
Yeah, kind of like certain platforms
Yeah,
that we
certain
know
certain
about.
certain things.
It's the Field of Dreams thing, right? If you build it, they will
Yes,
come, but it's a reverse. It's not for the poor farmer who has dreams of, sports. It's those that run technocratic platforms.
right.
They build it, and then we people that want to use it and put stuff there. And it's going to be the same with their AI. That's the only reason they're giving us their AI
Mhm.
for free, is because
Yeah,
it's not going to get any quote unquote smarter until it's interacted with a certain amount of people. So far it's
right.
only interacted with those folks out there in Silicon Valley and all the other places, in the government
Yes.
that work with them. So, very similar, I would say.
Yeah, and one thing that we haven't really gone into here is the similarity, is the nexus point with Oppenheimer, right? Which they mention these two pair together better than that film, but that's only because they pair in term they made a case in the article itself. But one of those is the aesthetic similarity between the two? Well, it's actually the aesthetic difference, right? The juxtaposition between the black and white of Oppenheimer and the colorized world of Barbie, where we get this middle point in Asteroid City where it's both black and white and color,
Yeah.
right? And where, of course, nukes are on the horizon. I mean, they're in the desert, they're inside of a crater. At one point, we look out and we see a nuclear explosion. And this reminded me of there's a part in I've got a couple books on Howard Hughes up there, and one of the funny things that Howard Hughes did was when he went to Vegas and he was vying against Kurt Kerkorian for control of all the casinos. He just went there and he saw that Kerkorian, his sort of rival, owned all these places. He decided to get into it, and that's why he started doing it. And then he lived in the penthouse of this casino, and there's a part where because we don't have really a biographer of Howard Hughes because he didn't talk to many people. He talked to his handler, who was that Robert. I forget the guy's name, but he was a FBI CIA contact. That was his main guy. But that guy didn't write anything about Howard Hughes. And then we have the assistants. The assistants they're all Mormon. They have to be Mormon, and they come in and they had to wear Kleenex boxes on their feet. And whenever they handed Howard Hughes paper, they had to have 7 layers of Kleenexes and then seven on bottom and 7 on top. And the room was sterilized daily. And so all we have of Howard Hughes is his memos. He was a voluminous memo writer. So that's how we get his biography. But there's a part where in his memo, he gets mad because he's lying in bed and he says, "My bed keeps shaking. Damn it, call Nixon. Tell him to call off the nuclear tests." And he did. He didn't like that his bed was shaking in his hotel room in Vegas because he could feel the effects of the nuclear tests in the desert. So he called off the nuke tests. He told Nixon, "Call it off." And Nixon was like, we can't really do that. And he's like, "Call it off, or I'll withhold all the salt," or whatever he had whatever he had control of. It was Aristotle Onassis who had the control of all the salt importation, but Howard Hughes had a bunch of other stuff. But I think that's interesting because there's, like with Howard Hughes, there's this phantom figure that's looming above everybody that's in this hotel room in Vegas. In this, one of the looming figures, of course, is the president. Because we never see the president, but there's constant references to the president. It's 1955, so we're in Ike territory here. And the nuke at the beginning on the train says, "Do not detonate without authorization from the president."
Yeah, I love that.
Right. And so that sort of mirrors the other phantom figures in the movie, which would be the wife/mother, the husband of Tilda Swinton, the Larkins Foundation, which is also looming over. The Larkins Foundation, I suppose, is supposed to be like Carnegie Endowment, Ford Foundation, tying in with Oppenheimer,
right?
And then the looming bomb in the distance. So I don't know. To me, it just represents a midpoint between those two things.
Oh
What do
yeah.
you think?
No, I agree with you. Everything you just said there, and I personally I have not seen, like I said, I haven't seen Barbie yet. So, or Oppenheimer for that matter, man. To be quite honest, I want to see it, but it's 3-hour investment in the theater was
Yes.
not something I was gonna do. So I'm kind of waiting for it to float my way, and then for the free time to line up. So, it's difficult for me to comment on the way those two movies intersect here. But after watching your analysis, I know a little bit about it. So, I knew to flag this one up when I saw it because it's just like I hadn't even, I hadn't searched it. I just saw the tile and clicked it. So, like, I had no idea what I was walking into.
Yeah.
And that first, right up there in the beginning with Matt Dillon, that was what immediately grabbed me because I wasn't planning on sitting down and watching a movie when I first turned that on. But then I saw the scene with Matt Dillon, and it's just like, oh man, I was like, this is like Matt Dillon at his finest. And then the way that the scene with the car happened and the piece that fell out of the car and the way it behaved, it was so alien. It was almost like there was this alien sort of, I don't know, like feature to the engine of the car that was either going to survive or not. And then when it didn't, it like flopped around on the ground like a dead fish. And I'm just sitting there going, what am I watching? All right, I'm in. I'm strapped in. The colors are good. I like some of the actors. and that scene was weird AF. I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna watch. And then it got nuclear nuclear clouds start popping off, and then all the
Right.
characters are used to the nukes dropping, and they happen multiple times throughout, and it's just like they're eating their, the first time it goes off, it's like it interrupts their pancakes and coffee, and it's worth taking a picture of. And then through the rest of the film, it's not worth, interrupting whatever you're doing and taking a picture of. Same with the alien. It's like the alien came back a second time. He didn't bother to take a picture of it.
Yeah. It comes back and returns the meteorite. Yeah.
After
For the
cataloging.
folks that for the folks at home, one thing that I this reinforced was that, did you know out there, you want to learn something? People out there, did you know that there's a difference between meteorite, meteoroid, and meteor? So a meteorite is the thing that you find on the earth, right? The meteoroid is when it's in space before it goes through the Earth's atmosphere, and the meteor is a general term for those things, like a comet, or when it's a movement. I didn't. It's not that interesting, but I didn't.
What about Metroid? Where does Metroid fall
Oh,
into
that's true, dude. Metroid is a game I used to play at Brian Pinkney's house when I was 8 years old. Okay,
Yeah.
it was awesome.
Dude, that game was great.
Yeah, no, that game rocked. Okay, all right. Last article, because this one I think is relevant here. So,
All right, hit
this
us. What do
one
we got?
this one is on Asteroid City and Angst. Okay, so let's look at this one. Invented. This is Miami Art Zine. Okay, Art Basel. Right, we will come to Art Basel, and you can buy a Basquiat for $400 million or Deutschmark. Miami Art Zine. Inventive Asteroid City finds inspiration in atomic age angst. Wes Anderson's period comedy boasts terrific ensemble cast, sharp script. Okay, here we go. Leave it to Wes Anderson to turn a story about an alien encounter and turn it into a study of the human condition. Okay. But that description makes Asteroid City, the Grand Budapest Hotel Auteurs 11th feature, sound stuffy and off-putting. Well, much like the film's trailers came across as a by numbers pastiche of his previous efforts. Rest assured, the finished product is nothing of the sort. It's playful, loopy, interesting, endlessly inventive, awash in the creative approach to cinema that has been the Texas filmmaker's signature from his early work in the 1990s. Forget that he's a Texan. Shouts out to Hesher out there, right? He's a Texan, and because he's, friends with the Wilson brothers, Owen Wilson. There's the handler, by the way, in the background, right there.
Yeah,
and by the way,
there he is.
Yeah, so this scene, I was wondering, is he the handler for the government, right, for where they are and SETI, or is he the handler for ScarJo's Marilyn Monroe / Betty Davis character, right?
Is he the same one that came in with Tom Hanks when she was, talking with the main character?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, he continuously reappears, and he's got his Joe Biden shades on there. Right. And also this scene where the daughter, right, looks, when I knew in this scene when I first watched it that the daughter's eye line was at the Brainiac's son, and I knew that they were going to have a relationship, and that was going to end up in the explosive kiss, right, that they have at the end of the film. So there was something about that. So
and he puts their initials on the moon with his science project.
That's right. Right. So interesting that he finds love while the dad is in grief, right? The son is in a sort of existential crisis because they don't even know what's happened to their mother, right? They're not even told what's happened to her yet. The sisters are in their own world, right? The sisters are Cassia. Yeah, they are so funny. I think they must be triplets in real life, but their names are Cassiopeia, Pandora, and there's another mythological constellation name. And also Tilda Swinton's character was named Hickenlooper, which I guess was a meta nod to there is a documentary filmmaker named George Hickenlooper, who died I don't know, years ago. So that must be a nod to him. But it says this time Anderson turns back the clock to September 1955. The setting is the titular location, a desert town, population 87, located where Nevada, California, and Arizona come together. A nexus point, 3 states, 3 films.
Oh, yeah.
Named for the crater where a meteor landed in 3007 BC, not BCE, BC. The juniors BCE is a way that academia tries to make a secular academic landscape.
Yeah.
The Junior Stargazers convention that celebrates this event gives the director a chance to explore a wide array of interpersonal relationships. There's brooding, grieving Augie Steenbeck, who stops by the local garage to see if the local mechanic, Matt Dillon, can fix his broken down station wagon. He's a Chad in this movie.
He is. Giga Chad.
He's a total Giga Chad, right? Along with Ricky Cho, right? Chad Jong-un, he's a kind of a Chad in the movie. He's the Chad of their group.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, he hasn't gotten around to telling his children their mom has died, much to the chagrin of his father-in-law, Stanley, a silver-haired Thomas Hanks. There's June Douglas, Stranger Things, Maya Hawke. I forgot she was in the movie. Maya Hawke is the one who gets off the bus with the Stargazers.
Yeah.
The God-fearing school marm tasked with supervising a group of students on a school trip. There's the Ranch Hands, a country band led by the dashing Montana. Oh, Rupert Friend is in this. And a lot of that, I was trying to see who Rupert Friend was because he reminded me of the guy who ended up playing Han Solo in the reboot, who played Lasso guy in the Coen Brothers movie Hail Caesar. I thought that was him at first, but it's Rupert Friend, who's in Homeland. He's great in Homeland. He's English, by the way. He plays himself as an actor, except for when he's playing a cowboy, and then he's got his Western accent. Is this a whole bunch of an expression he uses somewhere? Is it you trying to sell me some kind of frog-a-loop? some kind of inspection.
Yeah, that's good.
You trying to sell me a whole bunch of toad swaddle?
Yeah.
Inject
and
some Western.
The scene where he got chewed out by the chick from Stranger Things when the little boy was sitting there smoking a cigarette with them while they're having lunch and playing their instruments or whatever. That cracked me up. I thought that was really good comedy right there.
That was good. Homespun wisdom. Yeah. Most mysterious in this film about the deep mysteries of the universe and the human psyche is the presence of Midge Campbell, a movie star with shades of Janet Leigh and Kim Novak, with her daughter Dinah Grace Edwards in tow, which is interesting because I just did an analysis of Friday the 13th Part 1. Everybody, please go back and check out that. That
was good.
That Friday the 13th. Yes, and thank you for being in there. That Friday the 13th Part 1, because the character of Mrs. Voorhees reminds me a lot of that same thing, Janet Leigh and Kim Novak. And it says the stacked cast also includes Tilda Swinton as a scientist who sees great potential in this is probably her most normal film, Tilda Swinton, except maybe Michael Clayton. Augie's son, as well as Steve Carell, is a motel manager who sees real estate opportunities in the stretch of desert surrounding the town. And Jeffrey Wright, as an army general who is truly weirded out by the strange turn of events that befalls these people whose lives intersect in expected and unexpected ways. The breadth, he's so good in this movie. First off, right? The breadth of the cast may seem overwhelming, but like you were saying, probably the point in the actors being, it seems like they would take this for scale, is that who knows when they're going to be in a film together again, right? But one of the pleasures of Asteroid City is seeing the actors deliver their lines with deadpan precision. Their rat-a-tat delivery recalls the golden age comedies of Howard Hawks. Every breath, inflection, and pause is expertly calibrated, which also brings to mind the films of Joel and Ethan Coen. I wouldn't go that far. And there's Bryan Cranston as kind of a Rod Serling character. Anderson extends the calculated fastidiousness to the movie's meticulous design. It's if there's one word that Wes Anderson movies that can encapsulate those, it would certainly be fastidious. Cinematographer Robert Yeoman has crafted a look that's at once bleached out and filled with rich, saturated hues. Okay. That's true. That's a great way of describing it. Part of the film is watching the actors fill the screen in sun-baked widescreen compositions, as well as those rigorous camera pans that help map out the town. Spain stands in for the American West. Okay. So did they film it in Spain? They must have filmed it in Almeria.
Oh, interesting.
That's where I didn't realize that. So I guess they probably also did that for tax purposes and to escape Karanka. But the spaghetti westerns were partly filmed. Well, no, they were Italy, but there are other American westerns that are filmed in Almeria in Spain. I went there. And let's see, the Sun. You can tell that this is an art magazine because of they're talking about the film composition and the sun baked widescreen compositions. Anyway, but what truly brings Asteroid City to life is how Anderson juxtaposes the movie scenes with its framing device, revealing the scenes out in the desert to be the director's rendition of a stage play. The wraparound sequences, shot in black and white in a more compact aspect ratio, introduce us to a TV host. There you go, channeling Rod Serling. Conrad Earp, the playwright who conjured Asteroid City into existence as a piece of theater, and Schubert Green, who is directing that piece of theater. There's our thumbnail right there, and there's the SETI satellites behind. There's I think this is Bob Balaban here on the right. He's the he took the place of Bill Murray, and then here's Fisher Stevens over here. In perhaps the film's more beguiling scene, Schwartzman, playing the actor who would go on to play Augie on stage, reads for Earp and an audition scene organically morphs into a discreetly rendered seduction. Right. Well, this is meta Hollywood. This is a true thing within the film, right? Mm-hmm. Schwartzman, an Anderson regular since Rushmore, knocks it out of the park. He's never been better. How's that for a perfectly timed wink to moviegoer? Okay, all right, well, whatever. You usually feel Anderson's wheel spinning, but that sets Asteroid City is how relaxed and effortless the film feels, despite all of its disparate elements. Despite the parallel narratives, despite the meta dimensions shuttling between Anderson's curly-cued aesthetic and his depiction of actorly strife at a time when method acting is on the rise. And then, well, that's pretty much the end of the article. But so that's interesting because it's talking about a time when method acting is on the rise versus classical acting. And of course, that's what the Actor Studio and Lee Strasberg and the Willem Dafoe character represents. But also, method acting is about accessing personal memories within your sort of primordial mind versus the facade of pretending, right? Which the result can be the same. There's no difference in sort of the result on film. But it's interesting that it's method acting when the whole movie is about the characters feeling nothingness. Right? How are they going to access anything when there's a nothingness on the outer landscape and in the inner landscape of their lives?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and you see Scarlett Johansson doing that in the Technicolor aspect of it because she's always bruising up her eyes with makeup as though she's been beaten or abused or something bad has happened to her. She's doing that. She's the actress playing the actress. She's doing a good job of the meta version of doing that method acting sort of thing where when she's not acting she's always preparing to do this character and this require and then people ask her why who did that to you and she's like, oh, I did it to myself, or like, why? And it's like, what happens in the film? It's like, oh, she has a black eye in the film. It's like, no, I just think she feels like she has one. You know what I mean? It's just
right.
like that sort of all day like in the craft thing.
Yeah, is that also some sort of a nod to the way all of these elitist characters have the black eye? I don't want to get too far. I don't know but everybody knows what I'm talking about here. The elite,
Yeah.
the people in the pyramid having the black eye, right? It also reminded me of Robin Hood Men in Tights because remember how Richard Lewis has a mole and it's constantly moving on his face in that movie? And then,
oh yeah,
Patrick Stewart, who has the best cameo of all time. I mean, Sean Connery plays King Arthur in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and then of course Patrick Stewart plays him and plays King Arthur in Robin Hood Men in Tights. And he comes back and he goes, your punishment is from henceforth all of the toilets in the kingdom will be called John. So with Scarlett Johansson, there's also a bit of there's obviously Marilyn Monroe. Right. And Marilyn Monroe had one of her last films is with Clark Gable, who was pretty much broken at that point. This is like 1960, one of his last films. Clark Gable was known because his wife died. His wife had died, I think, in a plane crash, and he had gone off and served in the war, forsaking his movie career. Different from Jimmy Stewart, who was, and Ronald Reagan, who were involved in like Lookout Mountain stuff. I think Clark Gable actually went over and did that. And the Misfits takes place in a kind of it's cowboys in a desert landscape. And it's Marilyn Monroe, Montgomery Clift, and Clark Gable, who are all these three kind of tragic characters in this movie. And there's a scene with her in the bath, and she's like, she looks just like that painting of Marat from the French Revolution, like she's lying there, right, with her arm out of the bath, and there's like pills all over the place. Also, the pills were huge. Did you notice that? the, the Technicolor pills that she's like,
horse tranquilizers.
Yes, yeah, total horse pills that they had. So there's that. So what else? Just to wrap it up here, I'm trying to think of some of the other characters and violence in the movie. There's so many people involved in the movie. So Roman Coppola wrote the film, and he did Moonrise Kingdom, Darjeeling Limited, French Dispatch, which are kind of, in my opinion, the worst of the Wes Anderson films. Forgive me if you disagree with that, but out there. But Wes Anderson really hit his stride. Like Rushmore, people say Bottle Rocket, that's his first movie, but Rushmore, Steve Zissou, and Royal Tenenbaums, and then he kind of went on this trajectory of these other films. But Bryan Cranston, Edward Norton, Maya Hawke, of course, is in it. Daughter of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. Rupert Friend, Hope Davis is in the movie. Liev Schreiber, Matt Dillon. There's a lot of cameos in the movie as well that are hard to catch. Bob Balaban's in the movie. Tilda Swinton, Adrian Brody, Jeff Goldblum, Willem Dafoe. I mean, there's so many people. But I think that's about it. I mean, any closing thoughts for this film?
No, I mean, it was fun, man. It was fun to watch. It was fun to, know as much as I know about Barbie and Oppenheimer because of your channel and your streams that you've done. And, man, once I watch those, I'm sure I'm going to think of 150 things I wish I would have said. But as far as Asteroid City goes, for me, it's generally a thumbs up. It's a fun film. And there's, that last write-up you read on it was very, very surface level. So I'm glad we got to get, they treat it like it's just the color part. I mean, they mentioned the meta aspect, but I think the meta aspect and some of these timeline themes that we're playing with here tonight while we think about it are really interesting. So it's been fun to dive into this one with you, man. Hope to do it again soon.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, we got to do Snowpiercer. You mentioned Snowpiercer a while back, and we got to go back to the film and watch that.
I just watched it 2 weeks ago with Spore, man. I'm already ramped up.
Because again, you have Tilda Swinton. Again, you have compartmentalized world. Again, you have the trains, right? The train, right? With the various, and that one, it's much more compartmentalized, like areas of society all in one part, going towards this Masonic architect at the end. And you're right. That last article was you could tell that it was a Miami art magazine focused on the color palette.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Because they want to get still frames from the movie to sell at Art Basel. Right. Bruno Bischofberger will be here selling this for $200 million Deutschmarks. I think that, again, I think that whenever we have meta aspects in film and we have films within films, it always brings to mind, it's supposed to convey a sense of where are we in reality and what's real. All art, why are we here? Right. And what do we do while we're here? The search for God, the search for meaning. What's our relationship with God and what's our relationship with each other? And it's interesting that this takes place in a fragmented, postmodern, post-A-bomb landscape where everything on the surface looks linear and fine, right? It's like we have The bungalows are neat and tidy. The desert is neat and tidy. We have that. Even the way that the outlaws are chased by the cops is like timed, right? It's back and forth, and so everything seems to be in its place. But underneath the surface, there's this existential crisis that the characters are reeling from, and it's something that is off stage. It's off movie. It's off print, off frame, off stage, and we get lost in this kind of, you know, in a way, it's like we're looking through the looking glass. We're stepping through the looking glass again in this. Um, and so I think that's interesting. I think it's hard to determine whether this is some sort of satire. I don't think it's a satire. I think it's a kind of parody on our viewpoint of the 50s. It has all of the 50s tropes in it, right? But what does that say about our world and the future? And I think that Hesher brought up some really astute points, especially about Wes Anderson as the filmmaker and his vision of uncertainty, right, in the future, at least within his own industry, right.
That's just my take, man. I
Yeah.
mean, I'd love to hear what he, as a true artist, he would probably never tell us that grand of the viewpoint behind it, but that's one of the
Yeah.
fun things about it is being able to, try to put yourself in that person's shoes. And I do feel like it's a much more, it shows a progression of maturity as a writer and director. And, shout out to the other people he wrote it with and worked
Yeah.
on it.
Well, I think that he would probably be the worst person to answer questions or to explain about the film. If he's a filmmaker of any note, if he's a true artist, he would answer, "Watch the film." Right? Everything I have, I put into the film. Right? Like Eric von Stroheim, the man you love to hate. Everything is on film, right? Sabrina brings up a good point. I can't get past Darjeeling Limited. Only Anderson can make me care about three immature men. Well, that's a good point. And that is another movie with a train
Yep.
in a kind of foreign landscape, where, by the way, that movie was made at a time where Owen Wilson was supposed to be in Tropic Thunder, but he couldn't be in it because what I read was that he OD'd and that he was put away for, he put himself away for an S-sidal incident, which is interesting because his character plays that in the Darjeeling Limited. So again, we get meta aspects of real life and film kind of playing into one. And yeah, Rushmore is fantastic. So yeah, that's Asteroid City, you guys. We've done a lot of films here. Please go back and watch the Halloween, Dark Fall, Spooktober, Spooky Season, Final Girl, Episode 1, where we did Friday the 13th, Part 1, Barbarian, and what's the other film? Forget the other film that we did. Barbarian, and guys in the chat, what did we just do? Oh my God, what did we just do last night? I've watched so many movies. Oh, American Horror Story 84.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, coming up tomorrow night, you guys can see me on Digital Minefield, Real Cooter Brown, Maddie's channel, Digital Minefield, where we're going to be analyzing the film Looper by Ryan Johnson, which is, have you seen that movie?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's a great movie, right? And it ends up being a Monarch movie, which is interesting, an 11 kind of level Stranger Things movie. So we'll be doing that. Saturday, you can see me in another kind of meta reality movie with Gnostic overtones, which is The Truman Show. And you can see me on Made by Jim Bob's YouTube and Rockfin channel. And then also I'll be covering, I rewatched the film of this today, and tomorrow I'm going to tear through the book. That's Creeper King's The Dark Half, which is a 1989 book about DID, vestigial twins willing another twin out of the demonic realm into reality. It's not bad. So we're going to do that. And also you can always find Hesher. Hesher, tell them where you can find you.
AlternateCurrentRadio.com. That's where you find us, where we do the Boiler Room. We have a Rockfin channel, just at Boiler Room on Rockfin. And we have a YouTube channel that we're not using a whole lot lately because we just can't seem to understand the terms and services. We're working on that. We've got our best people working on it, trying to figure out how to keep us on YouTube for the longer run. So I appreciate you bringing me on here tonight, my friend. And of course, we do a Boiler Room live every Thursday night, and Bayes Lit Analyzer joins us very often. So you should definitely check us out over there, alternatecurrentradio.com. And of course, Today's News Talk Radio. I host a couple of shows over there now, I guess. We don't really have the IDs and branding up, but this week we're doing a little bit of transitioning, and I have a new project going with Steve Hook. Very
Nice.
proud and stoked to be working with Steve Hook, and big shout out to Lynn Shaw. Did an amazing like 6-month run with Lynn Shaw on State of the Nation, hosted by Today's News Talk. So we've talked to so many amazing people on that show. We did you know, uh, 6 guests a day on that show in 2 hours, over 6 months. So we racked up a really nice, I would say, showography there. And Lynn hosts Lynn's Warriors on Saturdays over there at Today's News Talk. So you can follow her over there. And I'm with Steve Hook Steve Hook doesn't, I've never heard, this is another innovative thing that we're bringing to Today's News Talk is we've got the Steve Hook show. And then as a bookend now, I jump in and he does an extra hour so it's Steve Hook and myself, Brian McLean, they call me Hesher, for an hour. And then it goes into my show, where I do 3 guests in an hour. So basically, I'll still be getting my 6 interviews a day in, but in that first hour, I'll be co-hosting with Steve Hook, he and I, and then second hour, Brian McLean's show over there at tntradio.live. That's the website. Thanks for everybody dropping all those links in there in the chat here tonight. And yeah, I'm live over there with Steve Hook at, what is it? I usually think in Central Time, but I'll go in Eastern Time so everybody can do the math a little bit easier. From 4 to 6 p.m. So 4 p.m. hour, I'm with Steve Hook, and 5 p.m. hour, I'm driving the ship over there at Today's News Talk. So that's it. That's where you find me. Sorry that takes so long to say, but that's where I'm at. I'm pretty busy.
No, he's a busy guy. Everybody, please see the links. I just dropped some links there. Please
I
find
got a
again.
really big guest coming on Friday's show too. So tntradio.live, Steve Hook and Hesher. We're tentatively calling it the Hook and Hesher Hour, but we are not in charge of all this branding stuff. We let the amazing people at TNT figure that out. So we're just in a transitional week right here. But on Friday, you're definitely going to want to check out the show. We got a big surprise for you.
Check out the Hessian Hook. Check out the check out the Hessian Hook sessions.
Yeah.
Everybody. Yes, and please, everybody here knows where to find you. You know, you're a legend in this area. Please go to alternatecurrentradio.com. Go to tntradio.live and look at the State of the Nation. Shouts out to Miss Lynn out there, always very kind to me. Shouts out to her. It was a great meeting her and being on this show.
She's a big fan of you, man. You'll probably get an invite to Lynn's Warriors at some point.
Sweet. That's cool. That's awesome. Yes. And let me read some of the super chats before we go here. Shouts out to Jason out there for that $5. Appreciate you out there for sending that $5 in PayPal. Appreciate you so much there, homeboy. Let's see. Yo, shouts out to Chris out there who sent $20. Shouts out to Chris out there who sent a bunch of super chats over the past couple of days. Yes, shouts out to him. Shouts out to Rooks G, who does the music at the beginning. Really appreciate you. John Connor, who sent $15 last night. Also, I got to read some dono chats that came in late last night. Shouts out to Bayes Literary Enjoyer, who sent $5. And shouts out to Moldy Apple, who sent $11 on dono.chat. Really appreciate you out there. Let's see if we... let's see. Let me look at super chats real quick. And if I'm forgetting you, then please forgive me because I'll get back to it next time. Yo, I think I read Melly last time. Yes, shouts out to Melly out there. And thank you all for the super chats. Thanks for all of your patronage. And I will have the YouTube memberships up very soon. I got to put together one post, and then we'll have the 3 levels of membership coming up. And again, check out Boiler Room tomorrow night. And that's about it, y'all. Thanks for being here. Please go back and watch the old streams. Check out Hesher on all of the places where you can find him. Alternate Current Radio, TNT Radio, all those places. And thank you so much for being here. Love y'all. That's all we got. Peace.